This is modernism.
Wow.
But so is this, and so is this, and this. I'm Reece. I love building, and you should too. So let's go and explore the delights of London's built environment together. Today we're exploring modernism and its journey from the UK to West Africa, where it became known as Tropical Modernism. How did an architectural movement make its way from 1930s Europe to post-colonial Africa? Rejecting ornamentation and historical forms were the key drivers of 20th century modernism. Clean lines permeated the design's era, even down to where we housed our penguins at the zoo. You can see that in our last video. Innovations in materials and engineering dramatically changed the ways in which people lived, worked, travelled, and even relaxed. Architecture had to move with these changes, and modernism emerged as a beacon of, well, a new modern era. The Isokon, or Lawn Road Flats, was once described by Agatha Christie, who lived here, as a cruise liner that had been beached on the street. Walter Gropius, who started the Bauhaus School of Architecture, also lived here, and I can't think of more of a modernist seal of approval than that. It was the UK's first reinforced concrete block of flats, yet by the 70s it was sold onto the council and fell into disrepair. Let's see what it's like today. It was reopened in 2004 and now lives on as a time capsule to modernism, with stunning apartments that range from studios like this to penthouses. Modernist design features such as this wooden partition maximise the small space of the studio apartments, allowing the beds to be next to the front door. Duh. Architectural power couple Jane Drew and Maxwell were pioneers of British modernist architecture. They were all about using steel, concrete and glass for societal improvement. Drew played a significant role in the rebuilding of Britain after the war and contributed to the 1951 Festival of Britain. One of Fry's most notable buildings is the Sun House here in Hampstead. It was finished in 1935, just 1 year after the Isokon. Like most European modernist buildings, it has long windows, white walls and a flat roof. Kensal House, also designed by Fry, was one of the few modernist housing blocks of the era that wasn't occupied by the middle class. It was opened in 1937 as housing for workers of a utility company. It was the poster child for new, clean, modern housing for ordinary people, in stark contrast to the poor housing conditions felt by most in the city. Each of the 68 flats had generous balconies that were positioned to capture the sun's light. There was also a nursery on site, a playground, and gardens. The utopian ideals of modernism also encompassed education, with new school buildings like Impington College in Cambridge, designed by Fry and Walter Gropius in the late 1930s. Although to some people this architecture was seen as clean, modern and progressive, to many it was stark, cold and sterile. This minimalist aesthetic that rejected tradition was seen as far too severe for British tastes. While Fry and Drew were losing the battle for modernism in the UK, the British government were concerned about the growing independence movements in West Africa, which at the time was under British colonial rule. They decided to fund new buildings in the region to show their good government and assert control. Fry and Drew jumped at the chance to adapt utopian modernist ideals to a warmer climate. This would become known as Tropical Modernism. To find out more about the Tropical Modernism movement, I'm going to speak to Nana Biamah-Ofosu, architect and director of design, architecture and research studio V&A Projects. We're here at the V&A, we're in the Tropical Modernism exhibition, which you contributed to with your research. So what would you say sets apart Tropical Modernism and then European modernism?
For me, what's really interesting is how it responds to climate. So the use of brise soleil, so these kind of shaded screen walls, letting air in, but not direct sunlight. The use of large overhanging roofs to create shaded colonnades is really important. The sort of long, thin plan that allows good cross-ventilation in these buildings.
So what were the sort of important political events that led up to the inception of Tropical Modernism?
The Colonial Office had a £200 million fund, which was dedicated to building schools and community centres. So in Nigeria, you have the development of the University of Ibadan campus, designed by Maxwell Fry and Jane Drew. In Ghana, Infantsipim Boys School or Wesley Girls School. There's experimentation, but there's also experimentation with the idea of architecture, education, and the kind of makings of a colonial subject. For a long time, this story has centred on architects like Maxwell Fry and Jane Drew. But of course, there are a plethora of other architects who contributed to this style. Significant African architects who, for the most part, have been left out of this story. The Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology's campus in Kumasi in Ghana, for me, is really definitive. It's a site of some really significant buildings designed by architects like John Owusu-Addo, who was a pioneering Ghanaian architect who practiced in this style. It's a large campus set in the tropical forest, essentially, within a large clearing, and what you really see is this image of these modernist buildings kind of towering above the tree line, really responding to the kind of beauty of this setting, but also the climate that they find themselves in.
Ghana gained independence in 1957, Nigeria followed in 1960, and their new governments embraced and reclaimed tropical modernism as a symbol of their country's forward-thinking spirit, commissioning major buildings like Black Star Square in Ghana by Victor Adigbite.
While it does have its roots and beginnings in kind of colonial legacy, it becomes a kind of triumphant architecture that is really about independence and freedom.
What is the future for tropical modernism?
We're living in a climate emergency, and there's so much to be learnt from this architecture before employing technologies like air conditioning. We need to think much more thoroughly about how we design in a way that respects the climate and doesn't try to go against it, but works with it.
Over here in the UK, we're already seeing features of tropical modernism being applied to contemporary architecture.
Whoa.
When the construction of 20 Fenchurch Street, aka the Walkie, was nearing completion, passers-by began to notice something strange happening. The curved glass exterior that was facing south, directly at the sun, was casting a death ray solar beam onto the pavement. It got so bad that cars and bicycles parked here began to melt. One reporter even managed to fry an egg on the pavement. Architects and developers had to come up with a solution, and quickly. So in true tropical modernist style, they applied these shades, or brise-soleil, across the south facade, deflecting the sun's rays and stopping the whole of London from melting away. Phew. With a world that's getting warmer, will we be seeing more features of tropical modernism being applied to traditionally cooler climates, like the United Kingdom? So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and join me next time to find out how an architectural style was inspired by a urinal. Ugh.